You have sent the emails, you followed up, you had the Zoom call, and things are still stuck. Here is what no one tells you about why. The medium is the message, and right now, your medium is the problem. In this episode, I'm going to show you exactly what physical presence does that digital communication cannot do, why the most successful professionals are doubling down on it right now, and what you can do starting this week to close that gap. Stay with me for a bit. This one matters. I want to tell you a story about Marcus. He had been working the Hendrix account for 6 months, 17 emails, 3 video calls, a proposal deck that was so clean, his manager started using it as a template for the whole team. And the Hendrix deal sat right where it had been in February, untouched, at the same stage, collecting digital dust. His manager finally said, "Get on a plane and go out there." Initially, Marcus pushed back. The client was 3 states away. Flights were expensive, and we all know that hotels and rental cars can be a nightmare. The account might not even close anyway. And honestly, flying halfway across the country to meet someone that he had already spoken with on Zoom 3 times felt unnecessary. He knew them, they knew him. What was going to change when showing up in person? The answer to that question is everything. When Marcus walked into the conference room in Cincinnati, something shifted before anyone said a word. The client's VP stood up to greet him. They shook hands. One of them had even printed out the proposal, which Marcus had not expected because nobody prints anything anymore. The first 10 minutes were spent talking about the flight, about Cincinnati, and the absolute necessity for him to experience both Skyline Chili and Grater's ice cream before he left, and about the fact that Marcus had come all this way. And in that conversation, a relationship that had been transactional for 6 months became something else. 2 hours later, Marcus had a deal, but not the deal he had flown out for. During lunch at the aforementioned Skyline Chili, the client mentioned offhand that they were struggling with a vendor problem in their eastern region. And Marcus picked up on that immediately. His company had built a solution for exactly that kind of problem. He called his team from the parking lot and confirmed that they could scope it out quickly. And by the time he boarded his flight home, he had a verbal commitment for a contract twice the size of the original. None of that happens over email. And that's not because email is bad, but because email is flat. And flat communication misses most of what matters. I want to take a little time and talk about what flat actually means, because I think that most of us have gotten so comfortable with digital communication that we've stopped noticing how much gets stripped out. When you communicate in person, you're running multiple channels simultaneously. The words you say, your tone of voice, your pacing, eye contact, posture, the energy in the room. What do you do when you pause? What does the other person do when they pause? Email transmits words, maybe tone if you write well. That's roughly it. Video calls add back tone and some facial expression. They remove body language below the shoulders, spatial awareness, room energy, and the tactile signals that humans have been reading for tens of thousands of years. And here is why this matters in a concrete, professional way. Trust is not built through words. Trust is built through repeated, consistent exposure to all of those channels together. When you strip away those channels, trust takes longer to develop. And in some professional relationships, it never fully develops. Researchers at MIT found that face-to-face requests are 34 times more likely to succeed than the same requests made by email. 34 times, not 34% more likely, 34 times more likely. That is not a marginal difference. That's a completely different category of outcome altogether. A Harvard Business Review study found that physical proximity to colleagues makes meaningful collaboration 4 times more likely. 4 times. Meaning that the people sitting in the same building as their teammates are generating roughly 4 times the collaboration value of people who are remote. And the research from Gallup consistently shows that employees who interact with their managers in person are more engaged, more productive, and significantly less likely to leave. None of this is really surprising when you think about it. The surprising thing is how thoroughly most professionals have ignored it. I want to tell you another story, this time about Dana. She managed a remote team of 8 people. She ran weekly one-on-ones by video. She sent a team newsletter every Friday, and she prided herself on communication. Her team had good survey scores, and nobody was complaining in writing. For 18 months, Dana believed her team was fine. Her company brought the entire group together for a 2-day in-person retreat. By the end of day 1, Dana had learned more about her team than she had learned in a year and a half of digital management. 2 of her top performers were actively interviewing elsewhere, not because of pay, but because they didn't feel seen. The team had a reoccurring process problem that everyone knew about and nobody had officially raised because writing it up felt like complaining, and complaining digitally felt risky. Her quietest team member had been carrying a project that was 3 weeks behind schedule, alone, without asking for help, because the remote environment made vulnerability feel too costly. 18 months of video calls had not surfaced any of that. 2 days in the same room did. And that isn't a failure of technology. The tools worked fine. That's the cost of flat communication. Not just the information you never receive, but the trust that never develops because there was never a channel for it. I want to be both direct and plain here because this conversation tends to dance around something that just simply needs to be said out loud. Most professionals are not working remotely because it makes them more effective. They're working remotely because it's comfortable. The commute is gone. The environment is controlled. The social friction is reduced. Don't get me wrong, those are real concrete benefits of remote work, and I'm not dismissing them. But comfort isn't a career strategy. Here's what the research shows on career advancement. Remote workers are passed over for promotions at a higher rate than their in-office peers. Not because they perform worse, but because they're less visible. Decision makers make decisions based on who they know, who they've read, and who they've been in a room with. The remote professional is delivering work, but building nothing around that work. The digital only professional is becoming invisible, not incompetent, not underperforming, but invisible. And in most organizations, invisible and forgettable produce identical outcomes on a performance review. For those of you watching this and nodding along right now, already know that this is true. You have felt it. You've watched someone with less polish, less technical skill, and less output get ahead because that person kept showing up in the right rooms. And that isn't necessarily unfair. It's human. People trust what they know, and they promote what they trust. Now, before you go back to your manager and say that some guy on the internet told you to be in the office every day, let me be clear. That isn't what I'm arguing. The 5-day butts and seats of office culture has been argued and largely lost. What I am arguing for is strategic presence, intentional, deliberate, knowing which moments are worth showing up in person for, and making a decision to show up for those moments. Not every meeting is worth being in the room for. Most are not, but some are. And those are the ones that shape how people perceive you, trust you, and think about you when opportunities arise. Things like client relationship reviews, team kickoffs, performance conversations with your direct reports or your manager, presentations to senior leadership, cross functional assignment meetings. Those are all the types of moments where being physically present changes the outcome. Start by being deliberate about those and work outward as need be. When you're deciding whether to show up in person, you're not doing a simple cost comparison. Flight versus video call, time versus convenience. What you should be asking is, what is the cost to the relationship that does not develop because I was not there? What is the cost of the opportunity I will not see because I was not in the room? What is the cost of the trust that takes an extra 6 to 12 months to build? That math is harder to do, but it's the right math. Marcus did that math. He decided to get on the plane. 2 contracts came back with him. If you manage people, walking the floor is not optional. It's a core leadership responsibility that no video call can replace. The problems that get solved, the retention that improves, the trust that allows hard conversations to happen, all of that is connected to physical presence as a leader. You get information through proximity that you will never get through a screen. And your team gets something from your physical presence that they cannot get from a Zoom invitation. The signal that they are worth your time. The formal meeting is rarely where the relationship is built. The 5 minutes before and after the agenda is where trust happens. The hallway conversation, the comment during the walk to the parking lot. Show up a few minutes early, stay a little late, engage before and after. When you dial in on Zoom, those minutes do not exist for you. When you're in the room, they are often the most productive part of the entire meeting. Let's go back to Marcus for just a minute. He landed back in his home city, 2 deals in the pipeline, and his manager asked him what changed. Marcus thought about it for a few minutes and said, I was there. I was actually in the room. His manager nodded slowly and then said something that Marcus never forgot. He said, showing up is a skill, and most people think it's just a logistical decision. But the decision to go and the way you show up when you get there, that is a skill. And most people are out of practice. And he was right. Physical presence is a skill, and like every skill, it atrophies when you stop using it. The professionals who are deliberately practicing it right now, who are choosing to show up, to be in the room, to build trust face to face, are developing a competitive advantage that no software can replicate. The most expensive thing you own is your reputation, and your reputation is built in person. The person who shows up wins more often than the person who performs. Not every time, but enough times to matter. Here's my challenge for you this week. Identify one interaction where you have been defaulting to digital. One meeting, one client call, one conversation that has been stalling out over email. Show up in person instead. Try it once and see what happens. If you found this conversation useful, head on over to toby-talks.com. Subscribe to the podcast, check out the blog, and share this with someone on your team who needs to hear it. As always, I'm Toby Hoy. This has been Toby Talks, and I'll see you in the next one.